Hello everyone, my name is Arun and welcome to my channel, The People's Currency. Today I have Clayton Morris with me. He doesn't need much of an introduction. He's a well-known investor. He's investing in real estate, crypto, gold, etc. And most of you know from his YouTube channel, Morning Invest. I'm actually a huge fan of Morning Invest. It's my daily go-to playlist. Every day I listen to it. And the information you share is really awesome.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that.
And before we start the interview, I want to tell you that the name The People's Currency was inspired from one of your shows. You used to mention crypto as a people's currency, and I thought, yeah, that's a cool name for a YouTube channel. And so
way to go. I love that. I love that. That's exactly what it is. I mean, it is the people's currency. And so I'm glad you've adopted that name and run with it.
Cool. Cool. So I want to begin with understanding your crypto journey. Like basically, how did you come across crypto? When did you come across crypto? And like, when did you start investing? If you can just give a background about it.
Sure. It's been about 3 years now, roughly about 3 years that I started investing in Bitcoin specifically, and then a branch out, of course, into Ethereum and other crypto since then, and still hold, Bitcoin as well. So about 3 years ago, and I've been a longtime real estate investor, and one of the things that I'm passionate about is teaching people on my channel, Morning Invest, about store of value and protection of wealth. Because as I talk about, every government currency in world history has collapsed. And if the United States, if the US dollar is at $28 trillion in debt, the United States right now is sitting on the largest debt of any country in world history. How is that sustainable? So if your future is tied to this currency, to a fiat government currency, you're only asking for trouble. At some point, something is going to go massively wrong. They can print it for a longer amount of time, but when the value of that dollar is worth less tomorrow, it's going to continue to decline, and that's your family's future tied to that currency. So for me, cryptocurrency, I probably didn't go full bore into it until about maybe a year and a half to 2 years ago. But initially, I saw it as an incredible opportunity. This idea that governments couldn't control this, that to me was the start of my journey.
Okay, so when you heard the Bitcoin and crypto for the first time, right? Did you think that it's a scam, or like do you think like, wow, this is a great opportunity?
Well, I thought it wasn't tested yet. And, you really, frankly, we're still not fully tested yet and vetted. I mean, once you get world governments testing it, regulating it, I think actually will be good for it, because then it legitimizes it. And, when you're on the stock market, you see halts taking place and suspensions of stock trades during the day to, arguably to protect investors from volatility. And with crypto, we don't have that type of regulation. It's kind of a Wild West in many ways, but it's certainly becoming less so every day. At large institutions adopt it. But I think that, at the beginning, I didn't go all into it. I certainly didn't put all of my eggs into one basket. And even my friends who were incredibly bullish about Bitcoin didn't go fully into Bitcoin up until maybe about a year ago. Some of my friends like Anthony Pompliano, who were not fully invested in it, but very bullish on it, then finally about a year ago, basically went all in on it. So in the beginning, I don't think I would call it a scam. I would certainly, though, think that it was untested. And I was tepidly putting my feet in the water to see how it reacted.
Okay, cool. And like, since the fundamental of crypto is the decentralization, right? Like, so bringing up regulations or testing it formally, does it affect crypto in a way, or like, do you think it's something which governments should encourage, take it up?
Well, I think it's inevitable in a number of ways. Number one, taxes. Government is not going to want to miss out on this opportunity to tax somehow profits from this. So that's going to be inevitable. You obviously, you see many jurisdictions around the world right now, which are sort of crypto havens for people that can come and invest and not have to pay taxes. I'm thinking of things like Portugal and others, where you can get crypto profits and not really worry about that. But at the heart of it, having regulation in place legitimizes it, because I think the big question for a lot of people is this a legitimate asset? And when the governments put their stamp of approval on it, it legitimizes it. In many ways, it protects it. And I also think it can help us to root out scammers. I think it can help us to protect people who are investing in it as an asset. So I think in many ways, and I'm sort of on the same page with this as Michael Saylor, who's been a guest on my show. He believes that regulation is not only inevitable, it's needed. And in many ways, it does legitimize the asset. Ron Paul, who I've spoken with recently, also feels that, obviously the government is not going to ignore this. They are going to want to get their piece of the pie. They're going to want to have their hands in this asset. They're going to want to have their hands in some of this profit. And just like they're missing out in the United States on cannabis, Canada has seen the rewards of legalizing cannabis. The United States is probably going to do it within, I would think, in the next year at the very least, so that they can get their hands on the taxes associated with legal cannabis. So I think it's a good thing. I think it's a strong upside for crypto.
So El Salvador has a upper hand on it.
Yeah, El Salvador is an example. I mean, absolutely a legitimizing force. Really, it's amazing to think that El Salvador was able to move the discussion and dialogue so strongly, where you had other countries like Paraguay and others looking into creating, putting it as a legal tender. Where you can go into these villages and be able to use crypto. I mean, I think it elevates an entire population. But then you still have the strong, the International Monetary Fund, the IMF saying, whoa, wait a second, hold, not so fast. So again, we're still in this position where you're getting sort of this pushback from some of the institutions that maybe see gold as the primary standard, or the US dollar as the reserve currency of the world.
Cool. Okay, I have an interesting data which I saw recently. Like in India, crypto grew from 200 million to $40 billion in just 1 year. And it is estimated that there are 10 million users in India alone using crypto, like having a Bitcoin address. So, but still, like if you ask common people in India, right, like they're not so aware about the fundamentals of crypto. They're just buying Bitcoin without even knowing what it does, or like why are they buying it, stuff like that. So how do you think like you can popularize crypto to masses, basically target those bottom of the pyramid and let people know why are they adopting to crypto and what is the fundamentals of crypto? Like how do you promote that to the masses?
Well, I think education is the key to all of this, right? And what you're doing with your channel is incredibly powerful. Getting the message out about that, talking to children about it, talking to schools about it. The problem is that there's just not a lot of knowledge. And I think it's easy to make fun of something that you don't understand, right? All fear comes from the unknown, right? Yeah. Most mockery of things, people make fun of the things they don't understand. So whenever you watch mainstream media in the United States, a lot of times, if you watch the mainstream financial networks that are run by corporate billionaires that are making a lot of money off the US dollar and so forth, and in the US banks, they make fun, or they sort of push crypto to the side, or they kind of make it as an aside of their stories, Bitcoin, Dogecoin, et cetera. And you see them glancing and making, like, smirking when they're doing stories about it, like, well, we told you so, Bitcoin's down again, and we told you so, et cetera. And I think it starts with education. And then I think when India, particularly, in India, you're raised with the ethos of gold, right? I mean, it's like incredible. Think about, from a young age, I'm sure you could tell me, like, were you taught about the value of gold since childhood?
Oh, yeah. Everyone loves gold here. Yeah.
Yeah. Everyone loves gold in India. Even more, I mean, I didn't really know much about gold in the United States, but in India, gold is the standard, right? It's everyone knows about it. So if you can think, well, at what point are we teaching children about store of value, that gold is a store of value? And I'm not saying replacing gold, because I'm a fan of gold, like not replacing it, but as a store of value. How can we also teach people about modernizing a store of value in India, right? Thinking about the huge upside with tech and technology in India, and the growth of technology companies in India. And look, we need to modernize gold. And this is a modern form of gold. It's easier to transfer. I can leave India with this in my digital wallet. How do you move with a giant bar of gold? Where do you put that? And so it's digital, it's trackable, it's divisible. All of those things make it where I think at a young age, we could be teaching people in India about the power of digital currency, and that it's the people's currency, that it's empowering. It's not tied to a government. And I think it just needs to start in the home. I think it needs to start with parents. And I think it needs to start in schools at a young age, just like you were taught with gold about gold in India at a young age.
Yeah, that's cool. And do you teach your children about Bitcoin?
I do. And it's a little, it's funny because my son will ask me, hey, daddy, can I have Robux? Can I have, he wants, or like Fortnite dollars, V-Bucks or whatever they are, and I'm like, I can't argue with him because it's like, in some ways it's kind of like fake money, and I'm like, well, wait a second. I have, crypto. And so I guess you could make that similar argument. So we have discussions at the dinner table about digital currency and how government currency is, it's constantly debased by the governments. They can print as much of it as they want. And so we talk about crypto, we talk about these assets and understanding that there's a finite amount of it. We know exactly how much exists. We know how much is being produced at any given time, unlike the US dollar. And in school, they were doing a class in his school where they had to create a country. So they created the island of Turtle Island or something like that. So he and his friends had to create turtle currency, and they drew it up and they colored it and everything. They had to print it out. So they had turtle currency. And so I was explaining to him, I'm like, you see how you just created that as the ruler of turtle world or whatever? And he just created as much currency. So I'm like, that's what governments do. So that was a really good learning moment for him, I think.
Okay, cool. And I don't know if you have seen any ads from India, like the Bitcoin exchanges in India, right? They promote that buy Bitcoin from 100 rupees. Like it's like $1.3. Do you see that like people who are buying Bitcoin or any other cryptocurrency for like $5, $10 in a month, can they attain some value out of it? Or do they benefit from it in the long run?
So there's a difference between protection of wealth and an overnight sort of get rich quick scheme profitability. The way that I look at gold, the way I look at Bitcoin, well, first of all, Bitcoin, we've seen incredible returns year after year after year for Bitcoin, right? So if you're betting against that, I think you're crazy. And great that you could make profits on it. But to me, I look at as a store of value coin, Bitcoin specifically, you're taking your rupees and you're transferring it into a currency which is stable and is not run by any government, that can be debased. And so by moving your currency, yes, it'll go up and down in value, but what the idea is that you have control of it. And so what you're doing is you're trading, I think, a lower class asset into a higher class asset, protecting yourself. That's exactly what we saw in El Salvador, right? On a much larger scale. The US dollar fluctuates, the euro fluctuates, the rupee fluctuates, the yuan fluctuates, but El Salvador collapsed, right? So to get like a chicken at the market it was a ridiculous sum of money in their currency. But with Bitcoin, it provides a stable store of value, and it's fun. You're able to move it around and leave with it. So in that way, I think if people can think of that for the, like, taking rupees and turning it into something that's a stable store of value, like you've been taught with gold, to protect your wealth. Because a lot of people say to me, well, yeah, gold prices, they've been hovering around $1,800 an ounce or $1,700. But I don't buy gold or crypto because it's just going to explode in value. I buy it to protect myself against hurricanes and against the headwinds of the the monetary policy of these governments.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that makes sense. But like, do you see like in the current market, right? I think like a lot of people are just adopting to crypto in the recent past, and like they're not much aware about the whole fundamentals or arena about the crypto. And when they come into the market, they see a lot of fluctuations. Like unlike real estate or gold, right? Like it grows in a stable rate. Like there's no lot of fluctuations happening up. But as a new investor who's coming into crypto and seeing a lot of fluctuations, like what do you think of the pros and cons of fluctuations in crypto?
Yeah, you're certainly seeing much higher volatility in crypto than you do in other the Dow and NASDAQ, S&P 500 in the US, and gold, for instance. I mean, gold prices, sort of relatively boring and stable. And so that one thing I think you should is not to be 100% invested in anything. I'm not. I own real estate. I own gold. I own gold companies. I own some long-term stocks, and I own crypto. And so, if you're putting a portion of your money that you want to protect as a store of value inside of Bitcoin, inside of crypto, know that if you check it every day, you're going to probably be pulling your hair out. But over the long term, you're going to, you see these massive dips, but you see these incredible movements and spikes. So over the long term, we see price targets of $100,000 for one Bitcoin, $500,000. I heard one analyst saying he sees Bitcoin hitting $1 million per Bitcoin in the next few years. So, but yes, you're going to see pullbacks. As you and I are talking right now, I'm expecting a pullback in Bitcoin to around that 28,000 range. I'm waiting to see if it even drops down in the 20s, but it's going to bounce back. I mean, it's going to, right? The inevitability of it. So if you can just deal with that. Also remember that crypto is a young market. I mean, look, we're 12 years old, like we're not even a teenager yet, so you do, not all the Bitcoin have been mined, right? So you're still a very young market where we don't even have the regulations in place. And so as this grows, as it becomes larger and larger and larger, then volatility, someone tweeting, Elon Musk making a tweet won't move the market the way that it does now. Again, it's a very young market if you think about that. So you see this volatility, that's because of the newness of the market and the size of it, which is not yet massive. I mean, it's massive, but it's not yet to the level that we're talking about worldwide with other asset classes.
Yeah, true. Like, I think recently I read somewhere that crypto is same as internet users in 1990s, and we are still long way to go.
Exactly. Right. Still using dial-up modems,
True. Cool. And people like Michael Saylor, right? Who are all in for crypto. Do you think the institutions buying crypto, is it good or bad in the long run?
I think it's only good, but I think we also need to be aware that the institutions get bored easily and quickly with certain assets. So they can move into Bitcoin when we see big price action. And then institutions get bored when it hangs out at $33,000 for weeks at a time and drops to 32, 30, and just hangs out there. And so these institutions kind of move with the market sentiment. And when you see huge earnings returns from the big banks, you see big institutions, big trusts moving out of Bitcoin over the past few weeks into some of these other assets, into some reopening stocks and airline stocks and big bank stocks and so forth. And so what I'm seeing right now is a lot of these institutions watching what happens in the next few days with Bitcoin. For instance, Grayscale, which is a large trust, which allows their clients to have Bitcoin exposure inside of the trust, but not actually have to own Bitcoin and handle it and worry about custodians and all of that stuff. They can have inside of their trust, they can have Bitcoin exposure. Well, for the first time in 6 months, they're allowing the unlock period is unfolding for Bitcoin inside of their trust on July 18th. So what happens? Are a lot of those people that own inside of their Grayscale account going to say, oh my gosh, I've seen Bitcoin, it was at 40 just a few weeks ago, now it's down to 32, sell for me? That institution could. So these institutions, while great, because they are now getting involved in a large way, can help make the market even bigger. But they can also, in the early stages of such a young market, 12 years old, can move the market in adverse ways. So it's both good and bad. It's I guess a double-edged sword at this point.
Okay, cool. And I know that you also invest in altcoins, right? Not just on Bitcoin. Do you think altcoin can survive in the long run as well?
It depends on if it's meant to be a store of value coin. I think at the end of the day, how many store of value coins can you have? I think obviously Bitcoin is brand, it's first to the game, it's biggest. Is there going to be another big store of value coin like Bitcoin that comes along that can dethrone it? Perhaps. But then, so that's one question. And when you look at something like Dogecoin is kind of like another store of value coin. Well, is it going to be able to beat Bitcoin? I doubt it. So in that way, as an altcoin, would I go all in with my children's future on Dogecoin? No way. But with some of these other big DeFi projects, obviously, that are not meant to be store of value, right? They are large networks that are, when you're talking about Polkadot or, Ethereum and Cardano and these sorts of things. So I think there's going to be still a really important market for those types of coins in the long run. It depends on how long. So I think you're going to have two different markets emerging. You're going to have the store of value market, AKA Bitcoin, and then you'll have the big, DeFi platforms like Ethereum. People talk all the time, well, Ethereum unseat Bitcoin. Well, as a store of value, I don't know, or as a network. So it's a question of like how these all shake out over the next few years. Will we, store of value versus network, I guess.
Cool. And I think Ethereum 2.0 is coming. So maybe we might have some kind of big thing happening. We never know. Yeah.
And, of course, what Cardano would say is, that, Ethereum is cannibalizing itself, 2.0 is cannibalizing 1.0. So it's going to be interesting to watch, I think, through the end of 2021. I think we're going to see perhaps some more normalization of the altcoin market and see what actually unfolds between these DeFi projects.
Yeah, cool. And so when we look at the crypto market, right, a couple of years back, ICOs were a big thing. And now NFTs are becoming a big thing. Do you also look into these things, which is not something like NFTs? Are you interested in it?
I don't own any NFTs. I know a longtime friend of mine who, is very, very big in NFTs. He even launched his own NFT line not too long ago. And I think he's always right. He's always out in front of these things. And I think he's probably right that sports is probably going to be a main area where we see NFTs take off, the ability for you to get a digital signature of your favorite sports star, access to games for a non-fungible token, pass to a sporting event, those types of things. That's really, or concerts and musicians and bands will be powerful. I don't know that the digital artwork space is going to be as big as perhaps people thought it was when they were starting to talk about this in droves back in March and April. But I don't know. I don't know that my kids are going to be walking around with NFTs on their phone. Here's a little digital art that they paid for and they have this. They're going to trade them like Pokemon cards. Maybe they will. I don't know. I personally don't own any, but I'm more interested in the technology behind it. So the coins, the platforms that are enabling NFTs. That's where I see the potential and the volume. If different institutions are accepting and taking on different NFTs, what's the underlying pipe that's running the show? Is it Polkadex? Is it what is running it? And that's what I'm more interested in, and where I would want to put my investment dollars.
Cool. And so, apart from Bitcoin and Ethereum, right? What was that coin which you're really proud to own? Not just in terms of monetary benefits, but personally, you're proud to own the coin.
I have to say, Internet Computer was probably the first one that I really felt morally excited about. From a moral perspective, Internet Computer, ICP. I really loved the idea that we could have an internet that's truly free and open, and that people can build their apps, their websites on ICP without having to talk to Google, without having to rely on Amazon, without having to rely on any of these other big companies. And so that's what ICP was trying to do, was trying to create, you could build apps on it, you could build your website on it, you could build an email provider on it, whatever you want to do. It's decentralized. It's not tied to any billionaire who can edit and censor and so forth. So I think ICP was really the first one when I said this is one I'm really, really excited about. So that was probably my first.
Cool. And so crypto as a currency, right? Crypto as an asset is now, it's well defined, and many people are using it as an asset or a store value kind of a thing. But when do you see crypto will be used as a currency for a day-to-day transaction, maybe buy a coffee, grocery with it? So will it happen, or?
It may happen. We just need governments to get on board with it. And the problem is, of course, speed of transaction right now for Bitcoin. I mean, and I think as Michael Saylor and I have talked about, why would you use Bitcoin to buy right now as a store of value, right? Because remember, you're paying you're paying capital gains taxes on it, right? If you sell it, right, you're going to have to report this in the United States to the IRS. It's a taxable event. So why would you use Bitcoin to buy a house? Instead, why wouldn't you take a loan against your Bitcoin, like smart rich people do, right? Take a loan against their assets. Then it's not taxable, and you're getting the benefits of having a loan and the interest on that loan on your taxes as a write-off. And now you can borrow against your assets to buy your coffee, to buy your house, to buy your car. So I think that's happening. If it changes where governments, there are certain obviously jurisdictions like El Salvador and other places are saying, we're not going to tax you on the transaction. If you want to buy a coffee with Bitcoin, you can do so at this stage, and you're not going to be taxed. It won't be a taxable event. So but in the United States, forget about it. Like, you're being taxed as a small, it's considered an asset, just like selling a house. You're going to be, or a security, you're going to have to pay taxes on it. So until that changes or normalizes, we need some standard here on how this applies. For me, then it's just going to remain an asset and not actually a currency. I think it's wrong to call it a currency, quite honestly, in many ways.
Yeah, it makes sense. Like, a lot of people prefer calling us crypto asset than currency.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's just the movement of it is not there. And again, why would you take, as Michael Saylor says, the highest asset class, the highest value asset, Bitcoin, and buy a liability with it, a car or something that's taking money out of your pocket every month. So you got to figure a way around it. They're taking a loan against your assets. What rich people take loans against their stocks to buy things, and then they don't have to pay the capital gains. In fact, there was a really interesting piece in the Wall Street Journal just like 3 days ago. I think the title was something like "How Rich People Avoid Paying Taxes by Taking Loans Out." And read that article because it really lays out exactly how they do it.
Cool. Check it out. And so I also read recently, right? Like, a lot of central banks are interested in creating digital coins. Like, do you think like government should create digital coins and like create their own crypto coins or things like that?
You said Garmin?
No, I read central banks are interested in creating digital coins.
In central banks.
The government,
I see. Yeah.
or central banks, would they be creating their own crypto coins or digital coins?
Well, I think they're going to. We already see China doing it. We see other jurisdictions doing it. The United States is moving towards it. So they will create their own digital currency. And I think the fear is, of course, well, it's not, the thing is, it's going to be just like a US dollar. It'll be digital. I'm excited about it for a couple of reasons. Most notably is emergency situations from a government. So, governments, they define their power by their money, right? So they're not going to want to miss this boat. And I think that's why they're going to want to push United States citizens specifically towards a US digital currency, of a one-for-one digital version of the dollar. In an emergency situation, let's say during a pandemic or a hurricane or a tornado where a community is wiped out, their banks are destroyed, people don't have access to money to be able to buy and get shelter and food, for the central bank to be able to step in and sort of immediately fill up their digital wallet with emergency funding. We saw obviously stimulus checks during the pandemic in the United States and other places. And to be able to do that digitally, where instead you're having to wait for paper checks to show up for a lot of people that literally lost their homes, they're in homeless shelters, they never got the check, it never made it to them in the mail. So in that situation, I think it's powerful. We need to move more digitally. We need to be modern. I mean, heck, I do all of my banking on my phone. Why can't the government allow me to do that as well? But this is where I think I am nervous. I am nervous about the future of crypto. I will say, like, I have a lot of optimism about it, but I am worried that the central governments, central banks, are speaking nicely about Bitcoin right now, but are sort of quietly moving in another direction, which is to try to see if they can't stop it altogether. They won't be able to do that, but look, as I've had Ron Paul on my show, former presidential candidate, he's like, governments will always try to regain control monetarily. And he's like, I've been around too long to think that the central bank, which he once dissolved, wouldn't step in and try to do something to try to stop the people's currency, to try to stop crypto. It removes power from them. No one likes to have their power taken away. And that's exactly what the people's currency does. It takes their power away. We're heading into some interesting next few years. I'll say that.
Yeah, I'm interested if they are creating coin, will they maximize the circulating supply or not? That's what makes a difference.
Right. I mean, that's the thing. It's going to be a one-for-one digital dollar in the United States. They're going to print as much of it as they want. There won't be a finite amount of it, like Bitcoin. I mean, China, they're trying to normalize it so that they're giving people the app. Chinese people are waking up and they have like this new digital Chinese currency in their wallet. They're like, oh, thank you, government, in an effort to try to almost like a PR move, so that they don't even think about using Bitcoin and these other alternative currencies. Like, hey, the government's giving me money. It's right here in my wallet. Thank you.
Yeah, true. Cool. Yeah, that's about what I want to discuss. I just wanted to maybe as a parting thought, if you can just let me know how is your portfolio set up, or what kind of coins you're interested or investing or planning to invest in the future.
Right now, I think, I've been a value investor for a long time, and sometimes I do the speculative play. So I look for things that provide value. I think it's fun to kind of get into the coins that are the meme coins that, it's fun to maybe play around with it with a few dollars just to see. But for the most part, I want to be long-term invested in coins with a store of value and that are going to be providing value. The ones that all you need to do is go to coinmarketcap.com. I mean, look at the ones that are sitting at the top of the charts. They're there every day. The Cardanos, the Ethereums, the Bitcoins, right at the top of that chart. And those are the ones that I like to have in my portfolio long-term. Now, that's not to say I won't jump in with some of these younger coins, some that have a lot of volatility, so I can make some money and do some trades on that short-term. But for us, like a long-term store of value, that's going to be those that sit at the top of that list, that have a track record and that actually provide something real, that have a framework, that have a network, that have a lot of institutions getting on board and backing these particular projects and utilizing them in their services and products. That to me is a real sign and stamp of approval.
Cool. That's great. It was really nice having you on the show. I really enjoyed and hope you do. And I'm looking
Absolutely.
forward to catch you up sometime in the future as well. We'll see. How's it going?
Thank you so much. I appreciate it. Thanks so much for having me on the show. I really appreciate it. Thanks for what you're doing and spreading the message. It's really important.
Sure. Thank you. It's my pleasure.